Have you ever asked a question, a desperate, aching question you've held in your heart for years, only to get an answer you never, in a million years, expected? This isn't just a real psychic story about a lost love, a classic tale of reaching across the veil for a final goodbye. It's a true story from my practice that reminds us of a chilling, beautiful truth. The dead often speak, not for themselves, but for the living too. Nathan didn't come to me to speak with his brother. In fact, his brother was the furthest thing from his mind. He came seeking the ghost of his late fiancée, hoping to learn if she still loved him after all these years. He'd carried that one single question like a heavy, jagged stone in his chest for more than a decade, a weight made of regret, sorrow, and a universe of what-ifs. He was a man living in a past he couldn't escape, haunted by a love he couldn't let go of. As a spirit medium, I've learned through countless sessions that the spirit world has its own agenda. Sometimes the person you are desperate to hear from isn't the one who steps out of the shadows to answer your call. It was a cold, unnervingly windless night when Nathan sat across from me in my study. The air was still and heavy, as if holding its breath. Around his neck, hanging from a simple silver chain, was the engagement ring he'd never had the chance to place on her finger. It glinted in the candlelight, a perfect circle of unbroken promise and unending pain. He wanted closure, a final answer that would allow him to either move on or to cherish her memory in peace. But the spirits, as they so often do, had other plans. Because love stories, much like haunted houses, often hold more than one ghost, more than one secret, waiting in the dark for a chance to finally breathe. Love is like a house. It remembers every promise made within its walls, every laugh that echoed in its halls, and every door that was slammed shut in anger. Nathan's heart was such a house, and he had kept it locked for 15 years. At 35, Nathan had never married. He lived alone. His life a quiet monument to a future that had been stolen from him. He kept the ring hidden away in a velvet-lined box, a relic he would only take out on the anniversary of her passing, turning it over and over in his fingers as if its cold metal could offer some new insight. But lately, the haunting had intensified. The dreams had returned, more vivid and distressing than ever. He would dream he was in a long, dark hallway, and he could hear her voice calling his name, faint and desperate. He would run towards the sound, his feet heavy as if moving through water, only for a heavy oak door to slam shut just before he could reach it. He'd wake up with his heart pounding, the sound of the slamming door echoing in the silence of his own empty house. His friends, with the best of intentions, told him it was time to let go, to move on, to sell the ring. But they didn't understand. Regret isn't something you can simply discard. It clings like a ghost, a constant whispering companion in the quiet hours of the night. And sometimes, the only way to silence that ghost is to face it, to seek out a psychic reading and ask the question that torments you. So he came to me, his hope a fragile flame against the wind of his despair, believing I could cross the veil and bring him back her answer. When he took the ring from his pocket to show me, the metal was unnaturally, shockingly ice cold, as if it had absorbed the chill of the grave itself. It felt like the past was sending a warning. Be careful what you ask for. Some truths, buried under years of grief and denial, creak much louder than the comforting lies we tell ourselves. Some spirits wait patiently in the shadows. They do not force their presence upon us. They wait until we are brave enough or desperate enough to finally turn and see them. Nathan spoke of the love they'd shared, his voice soft with memory. He described her laugh, the way she'd tuck her hair behind her ear, the plans they had made. Then his voice cracked as he recounted the day she died. Killed in a brutal car crash on a rain-slicked road, on her way to meet him. He had been waiting at the restaurant, checking his watch, growing impatient, while she was taking her last breath. His voice trembled like the candle flame between us. His grief as raw today as it was 15 years ago. He leaned forward, his eyes pleading, and asked the question that had defined his life. Does she still love me? Does she forgive me for not being there? But before I could even reach for my cards, the atmosphere in the room changed. The air, already cool, turned markedly colder, a deep, penetrating chill that had nothing to do with the night outside. The shadows in the corners of the room seemed to deepen, to shift and coalesce, and a scent bloomed in the air. Not her floral perfume he'd described, but something earthy, clean, and older. It was the sharp, distinct scent of pine needles after a rainstorm. I heard the floorboards behind Nathan creak, a slow, heavy sound, like a haunted house settling its bones for the night. And then I felt it, a presence stepping forward from the shadows. It was a masculine energy, strong, steady, and intensely protective. This wasn't his fiancée. Nathan, I said gently, there is someone here, but I don't believe it's who you were expecting. I described the energy I felt, the scent of pine, and then the spirit gave me his name. It was Ethan. It was his brother, Ethan, who had died in a tragic accident when they were just teenagers. Nathan's face went pale, his eyes widening in disbelief, and then tears began to form. He hadn't spoken Ethan's name out loud in years, burying that grief under the more recent, more romantic tragedy of his fiancée's death. In all my real psychic stories, I have learned to trust the process. The spirits who come forward are not always the ones we call upon. Sometimes they are the ones we truly need the most. I reached for my tarot deck. The same deck that has served as a conduit for 1,000 secrets, a bridge between worlds. As I shuffled the worn cards, the candles, which had been flickering wildly, suddenly burned tall and steady. But a low, resonant hum filled the air, like a forgotten song playing just at the edge of hearing. Ethan's energy was stabilizing the room, demanding to be heard. I drew the first card and placed it on the table, the Lovers. A card of union, choices, and relationships. But seeing it now, I knew it wasn't the answer Nathan expected. It wasn't about his fiancée. Then I drew the second card, the Six of Cups. A card of nostalgia, childhood memories, reunion, and, most importantly, forgiveness. Nathan clutched the ice-cold ring on its chain, his knuckles white, as the shadows in the room seemed to lean in closer, listening. And then a faint laugh echoed from the corner near the window. It wasn't malicious, it was warm, familiar. Nathan gasped. It was Ethan's laugh, the same boisterous sound that used to fill the halls of the house they grew up in. And then his brother's voice, a clear whisper through the veil, spoke a truth that shattered the foundations of Nathan's grief. You can't ask for her love if you've never forgiven me for mine. The secret, buried like a bone in the backyard of Nathan's memory, was finally unearthed. A terrible fight. Nathan had fought with his fiancée just before her accident, and the reason for that fight was Ethan. It was a truth Nathan had never faced, a memory he had painted over with the more palatable narrative of a perfect, star-crossed love. Sometimes a spirit medium is merely a messenger. The cards and the spirits they summon do the real talking. The real haunting in Nathan's life wasn't about his lost fiancée. It was the crushing, suffocating guilt over his brother that had chained his heart for all these years. As the energy in the room intensified, Ethan's spirit didn't just speak, he showed us. A vivid flashback flooded the space, a memory image of their last fight. I saw two teenage boys arguing in a hallway. I heard the harsh, angry words exchanged, words that can never be taken back. I saw Nathan's face contorted with frustration, and then the image of a slammed door. That night, a sudden storm rolled in, and Ethan was taken in an accident before Nathan ever had the chance to open that door again and say, "I'm sorry." The ring he kept so preciously wasn't just a symbol of his lost love for his fiancée. It was a lock on the door to that memory, a room in his heart he had refused to enter for 2 decades. The guilt over his brother was so immense that he had transferred all his capacity for grief onto the more recent, cleaner tragedy. As the wind finally began to rise outside, whispering through the cracks in the window, Ethan's voice came again, softer this time, full of a brother's love. "Forgive yourself first, Nate. That's all I ever wanted. Only then can you truly hear her answer." Nathan finally broke. He wept, not the quiet, dignified tears of a grieving fiancé, but the racking, gut-wrenching sobs of a boy who never got to say goodbye to his brother. He clutched the ring in one hand, and with the other he fumbled for his wallet. An old, creased photograph slipped out and fell onto the table. A picture of him and Ethan as kids, maybe 7 and 9 years old, with their arms around each other, grinning wildly in front of their childhood home. A haunted house of memories, its doors locked by guilt, for 20 years was finally ready to let him go. When the final card had been read and the last message delivered, a profound silence fell upon the room. The cold dissipated, the scent of pine faded, and the heavy weight in the air lifted. The hum was gone. Ethan was at peace. Nathan slowly wiped his tears, and as he looked up, his face was transformed. He looked lighter, younger, as if the stone he had carried in his chest for half his life had finally cracked open and dissolved into dust. In my years of conducting psychic readings, I have seen this happen again and again, and it never fails to move me. The dead don't always come to haunt or to scare. More often than not, they come to heal. They come to set the people they loved free. He left my office that night with the silver chain still around his neck, the ring still attached, but its meaning, its weight had fundamentally changed. It no longer served as a lock, chaining him to a past of guilt and regret. It was now a key that had opened a door to forgiveness, for himself and for his brother. He could now grieve both of them, fully and honestly. He told me later that when he dreams now, the long dark hallway is still there. He still hears her voice, but the door at the end of the hall doesn't slam shut anymore. It stays wide open, with a warm, gentle light spilling through from the other side. That is how love truly haunts us. Not as frightening ghosts in the dark, but as persistent, loving truths. Waiting patiently for a brave heart to finally listen. So I ask you, if you could call out to the other side, who would you ask for? A lover, a parent, a friend, And are you prepared for who might actually answer? What unexpected secret might they whisper to you? Not to chain you to the past, but to finally set you free? Tell me your thoughts in the comments. As you know, I read every single word. And if you want to keep crossing this veil with me, exploring the mysteries that bind us to the other side, don't forget, subscribe, ring the bell, and stay close. Because your next haunting, the ghost you need to face, oh, it might be closer than you think.